Hi, my name is Beth Azor, and I own shopping centers in South Florida. And this is my podcast, I Own a Shopping Center, Now What? So if you listen to this weekly, last week I did an episode on reports, important reports that I review running my properties. And I realized this morning that I neglected to talk about something that was very, very important and really contributes to getting the most rent possible and knowing when your tenants are telling the truth or not. So, and I forgot to mention this. This is the occupancy percentage report. So obviously you need to get sales from your tenants to be able to calculate the occupancy percentage reports. And if you don't get them formally and you are in their space, let's say you're at a deli and you're meeting, you're chit-chatting with the owner and you're creating this great relationship and, you say, so do you do $1 million a year? Like, you can kind of float balloons and get them to give you some sort of idea, okay? Or if they're complaining to you, right? You're doing paving and it's cut off parking for my clients and it's hurt my business. Well, how much were you doing before the paving? How much are you doing now? There's multiple opportunities for you to get sales. But let's say you've been following me for a while and you have jumped on the bandwagon of collecting sales and you're getting sales. On your sales report, there should be a column, and we talked about this last week, that I do the annualized and I do the per square foot, and I compare last year to this year. So those are kind of columns at the end of the report where, let's say you have a shopping center, let's say you have 10 tenants, you have 8 that report monthly, some might report quarterly, but at the end of the spreadsheet, there is sales per square foot, annualized sales, because like right now, we're only in April, we probably have only gotten March sales. So I'm annualizing what I think the sales are going to be, and then comparing it to years past, up 3%, down 3%, tracking down 10%. That's a vacancy probably coming. Very important. So another column is occupancy percentage. And let's say for the prior year, you have all 12 months and you calculate occupancy percentage. So that can tell you really in a nutshell if your tenant is healthy. The rule of thumb is 10%, but some businesses can do better than that. Liquor stores can do probably up to 18%. Jewelry stores can do up to 18%. Furniture stores and bike stores, really to be healthy, are probably less than 8%, maybe more like 6%. There is a book called Dollars and Cents. It was published by the ULI. The last published version was either 2006 or 2008. There is a rumor that ICSC might be trying to update this, but the information is really not stale. Maybe for nail salons. I think in 2008, nail salons probably didn't do the business they do now because they've added chandeliers and women are just, I think, spending more on their grooming, I guess. But nail salons, I've got one that does 2.4 million. So, and I don't think 10 years ago, nail salons were doing that. So that's the only category that I think has changed significantly where it might be a little off in this Dollars and Cents book. The book is hard to find. You can get it. Some people have told me they found it on eBay, but I probably look at mine once a month. I'm pretty good at occupancy percentages per use, but every once in a while, there's one that might stump me and I'll take a look at it. It's a great, great book. If you can get your hands on one, you should. But additionally, what this does is you start to get an idea of what is successful occupancy percentages. I have a sub shop that they were 3% when I went to do a renewal with them. So I knew, and a typical sub shop in the Dollars and Cents book says that they can pay 11%. That 11% of their sales can be towards gross rent. So, and that includes CAM, base rent and CAM. And they were at 3. So I knew I did raise them $15 a square foot. Now, I think they were at 32. I raised them, I think, to 45. And but I was getting 48 to 52 with other tenants. So I didn't raise them as much as I could have for market because they'd been there a long time and I love them and they bring a lot of people to my center. But even by raising them, I think $13 a square foot, they were still like in the 6% range. So because I knew that, I knew the occupancy percentage of where they were going to go and what was standard in their use, I was very comfortable with telling them that that was going to be their new rent. Additionally, what you guys can do as you all are all buying shopping centers and getting OMs, you can be getting these offering memorandums, looking to see if in the offering memorandums what the tenant sales are that they're reporting, and look at their rent and start creating some use scenarios for tenants that you get examples from in the offering memorandums you're looking for. So let's say you're looking to buy a power center and you've got Sally Beauty or Ulta or Chipotle or some of these tenants that report sales, and from the rent roll in the offering memorandum what their rents are. You can have a VA or a property manager, someone in your office create some occupancy percentage ratios so that you start to get familiar with and understand how successful these tenants are or not, okay? And then lastly, and I think I talked about this last week, but I don't remember, I have been able to use occupancy percentages and ratios to get my lenders in refinancing situations to give more credit, meaning a lower cap rate, to some of my local tenants because I have their historical occupancy percentage ratio history. So for example, a local sub guy, 4 locations, let's say if they're giving credit to Panera at a 5.5 cap, they might give this guy a 7 cap. And I can show them based on the sales and how long he's been there and his occupancy percentage ratio that frankly, he's a better cap rate than Panera. Now, they're not going to give him a 5.5, but they might give him a 6 or 6.25 because I can use that. And I have used that, and I've used it not only with refis, but also convincing buyers that because of occupancy percentages and length of history in the center, they need to value my local tenants stronger than typical. Because what is cap rate all about anyway? It's about how secure is the tenant. And many, many times, and we saw this during COVID, frankly, the local tenants might stay around longer than the nationals. So this is another report that you absolutely should start growing, because I know you guys don't have sales, but I know you're going to start collecting them. And this is a report that you can grow into, and then also use information from offering memorandums to start educating yourself on use percentage and ratios. Hope you enjoyed. Share the podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.